of royalty. Today we are going back to the mistakes of the Emperor. First things first, I would like to say a huge thank you to Old Man Reacts for watching part 1 of this. There is going to be more of it today. I hope you guys are as excited as I am. Did I sleep well? Better. Yeah. I actually woke up pretty early today, and I kind of just spent the whole afternoon chilling out, vegging, not having to do anything so I could be ready for today. I just took a little nap before I started. I was like, yo, I'm going to be refreshed. So I hope you're all as excited as I am in order to get this going. First things first, I do have to say, where's it gone? Bear with me. Where's it gone? Oh my god. A big thank you to my royal patrons! My tier 2 Patreon, Izzo, and my tier 1 patrons, Hansel Panda, Suki SJ, Stanley, Dan Cohen, and KS315, and Matt Ben. Y'all allow me to be sponsor free. So there's that. Hope you're all as excited as I am. Alright. Chilling out, maxing, relaxing, all cool. You know the game. Hey Alpaca, by the way. Hey Dan. Okay, I'm gonna stop the music. I'm gonna start the video. Oh. This is very dramatic. Let's go, old man. I would like to say it was very cool of Old Man to not only check out my last video, but also to interact with me. It's very cool that bigger Warhammer creators actually acknowledge my existence. That's very cool. Today is about Lorgar.
Rescind my previous looped broadcast. Replace it with this.
Okay.
Lorgar of Colchis, you may consider the following. 1. I entirely withdraw my previous offer of solemn ceasefire. It is cancelled and will not be made again, to you or to any other of your motherless bastards. 2. You are no longer any brother of mine.
Motherless bastards? What a name for the Primarchs.
I will find you, I will kill you, and I will hurl your toxic corpse into hell's mouth.
You've chosen the path of pain!
Yeah!
In 798 M30, when the Emperor's flagship set out from Terra alongside his fleet, it put actions to words to start the Great Crusade to reunite humanity. The Emperor was already being hailed as the greatest of all men, and secretly some whispered that he was much more than just a man.
Yo, Liam! Thank you for the lurk. Also, this is the video that you did. Your favourite Let's Go Curse Night, and welcome in. How are you both doing today? I hope you're having a fantastic day. I did want to say at some point an apology. I'm sorry that I have been a bit absent. I had another death in my life that I think is the 3rd one this year. 2023 is starting with a bang! Oh no, Old Man hates Lorgar with a passion. Me too, but where's Mateo for this?
But he dismissed such rumors vehemently. What is true about him is at the time of the Great Crusade, the Emperor was either nearing or slightly over 30,000 solar years in age. We all know this as fact, and your commissar is not insulting your intelligence, but what I am doing is continuing to lay reinforcement on the framework of my theory on the Emperor himself. In this particular instance, his age. Why is that so important, and why—
Yo, Dylan, welcome in! My god, I've missed you guys! Oh, live content is much easier for me to like come back into than videos, because when things are stressful, at least I can just sit here. Mateo! What did I just say? I just said I wish Mateo was here for the Lorgar episode. This is hilarious. And here you come. Hi. I was literally like, yo, Mateo should be here.
Why would I bring it up in particular now, in light of today's subject, Lorgar? 30,000 years, or in smaller numbers, 12,000 generations of humanity had lived and died while the Emperor walked. Imagine living while the world around you burns in the fires of war, plague, political, and religious unrest. Take 40K's lifespan since 1987, 34 years. Black Monday, Iran-Contra, the Berlin Wall, Desert Storm, the USSR falling apart, the formation of the EU, cloning, Kosovo, the International Space Station, 9/11, the Iraq War, Afghanistan, the Great Recession, Deepwater Horizon, the God Particle, the flyby of Pluto, dozens of hurricanes, earthquakes, and typhoons, 2020, and the most horrific of all, Bieber fever.
You didn't need to include that. I like the terror date. That one's funny. That's funny to have the terror date.
I've seen things you wouldn't believe.
That is an extremely short list of major events. The Emperor has been through that almost 900 times over.
Damn.
What sort of mentality does that experience breed? What sort of actions would that depth of experience warrant? It is my personal mantra that any opinion that cannot be defended without dismissing other key facts isn't an opinion worth having or even speaking about.
Funny.
This brings me to Lorgar. There are multiple things about Lorgar himself that bear the question that always seems to start with, why did the Emperor X? This, more than Angron, will be the first real test of my assertion of the Emperor's nature, and of course it has to be Lorgar, because
Wolfane mistakes the Emperor. I'd like to see stuff that the Emperor tried to control, but he couldn't. The Informator, a lot of mistakes, but to be being fair, we never get a book from the Emperor's view. It's true. I know we're doing Lorgar today, everyone. Are you dead excited? Fuck Erebus!
of course it would be. In the grand scheme of things, it all begins with Lorgar, and no, I am not talking about the raising of Monarchia in the first place. I am talking far before that. Because the first question that should be asked, even though it's not usually asked at all, is this. Why did the Emperor not kill Lorgar within days of meeting him? When the Emperor was planning the Primarch project, he made each of the Primarchs radically different from the others, sometimes directly specializing roles that the Primarchs would fill after the conquering of the galaxy. For instance, Dorne's Imperial Fists were always going to wind up being those who specialized in fortifying the Imperium once it was taken. Magnus the Red was most certainly going to be tasked with the maintaining of the Imperial Webway, and it's not a far cry to say that his Thousand Sons Legion would have been tasked with defending it from the possible predations of the war. The Alpha Legion would have been the Secret Police, and the Raven Guard right alongside of them.
Alright, I'm listening, Wolfane. What's this about Minecraft? Oh, you would be an Imperial Fist because you're a fan of Minecraft, and they're all about fortification. They build all of the bases, all of the walls and the cityscapes. They're big on defending, through building. So that would be you, Alpaca. You would be an Imperial Fist. Alpaca, they probably punch trees. I'm not gonna lie to you. It sounds like something Imperial Fists would do. Rodent Snorn, sounds like your kind of man. Craigasm, got you. Wolfane, come on, what do I need to know? What do I need to know before I continue? Also, oh my god, it's so good to see all of you.
So on and so on.
The second I clicked it, the reply came. Lorgar really needs something beyond himself to believe in. He was abused by his adopted father, and the thing that kept him going was his belief in the Emperor as a god. Yes. But once he had met the Emperor, he didn't have the internal, scope to say, hey, now I know part of what I thought was true, I now need to mold my idea around the reality. He just went straight into the cuckoo, cuckoo. Yeah, I remember that. That opinion will be changed by the end of this, the cuckoo one. Dylan, that's such an Imperial Fist thing to say! The punching of trees is a very ineffective method of deforestation. That's such a Rogel thing to say. Why are you being Rodent Snorn right now, Dylan?
Lorgar was meant to be the diplomat, while at the same time being Magnus's backup to manage the webway. Lorgar's purpose, regardless of my being right or wrong about his post-heresy future, was ruined. It was not exactly the planet that he landed on, nor Cor Ferron as many would believe, but it was Lorgar's own nature that led to his eventual destruction.
Oop.
The Emperor's nature has been the topic of this series, but to understand Lorgar, to truly understand Lorgar, understand the following. Lorgar's personality matches the Emperor's in all but 3 regards.
Rodent snort.
Accountability,
Yes.
confidence, and self-delusion. In every other way, were one to place Lorgar and the Emperor side by side, they would match up on any given personality test. These flaws, it is my assertion, were not simply personality flaws, they were engineered to be a part of Lorgar's emotional makeup by the Emperor himself. This may seem strange, but it is actually nothing new. Several of the Primarchs held very specific emotional dispositions that either formed them into the paragons or nightmares of the planet that they landed on. Kurz would be the best example of this outside of Lorgar himself. Conrad Kurz wanted to bring order. In fact, order and justice were at the core of his being. In both Conrad and Lorgar's cases, however, their natural tendencies became vastly warped by 2 things. The planet that they landed on, and the people who formed their early lives.
Damn.
Conrad had no one to teach him.
This is like a full-on biology versus like environment. That this is essentially what some of these Primarchs come down to. Is your biology strong enough to overcome the environment of which you were raised? And for some of them, no. And some of them, the biology was fucked too. So, Lorgar needed something. He was just a broken man. He needed religion, and I think that was one of the major faults. And that mankind needs something beyond itself. It can't just be mankind. I think there is enough atheists in the world to disprove that theory. I think, yes, he was broken, and yes, he needed something to latch onto, but his inability to change his perception of the reality was his greatest flaw in this.
About the subtle nature that justice must have for it not to be injustice. There was no one to teach him that order can be brought about without tyranny. He knew what a crime was almost instinctively, but what turned Conrad Kurz into the Night Haunter was the application of justice without mercy or understanding.
You mean Batman?
For the longest time, a woman who stole food to feed her starving children was the same as a murderer in Conrad's eyes. Both were criminals, and both needed to be punished. Once the Emperor came to Nostromo, and once Conrad began to learn that there was another way, he eventually began to lose the battle for his sanity that had been waged in his mind. Conrad was plagued by visions of the future, visions that ultimately he would bring to pass by his own actions. That, coupled with the fact that Conrad could no longer look at what he'd done for years on his home planet.
You know what's funny? A lot of the time people who, like, when you think about it, if someone could see the future, they would be more likely an instrument of that future than if they hadn't seen it. Because their actions would specifically go to either trying to avoid it or trying to make it happen. And that would make it more likely for things to either change or stay exactly the same. So if you're trying to make that thing happen, you're more likely to deviate from what would officially happen. If you're trying to avoid it, you are more likely to cause it, in my opinion. Except Batman would just comfort a crying child, this man just skins him. Yeah, but that's the fun version of Batman. You wouldn't be seeing the future then? You can see the future? What do you see for you, Alpaca? What do you see in your future? If you believe in nothing, and if you get everyone else to believe in nothing, eventually you create a god that believes in nothing, and it will bring around the end of everything. Damn.
And it is justified, eventually destroyed the Primarch, leading him down a road of self-destruction. Lorgar, on the other hand, was not affected by a lack of supervision and guidance. When he landed on Colchis, a highly religious world to begin with, he was found by nomadic tribes killed by the man who Lorgar would call his foster father. This man, Cor Ferron, was a power-hungry opportunist who had been expelled from the capital city of his faith because of his belligerent stance toward the spreading of his church. What gods did the church worship? Well, I'll give you 5 guesses, but you'll only need 4. And no, for all you screaming Malal right now, this is not fucking canon! In Lorgar, Cor Ferron saw a chance not to nurture and teach, but to control. Cor Ferron was both emotionally and physically abusive towards Lorgar. Yes, Cor Ferron abused Lorgar, and Lorgar, despite easily being able to kill Cor Ferron, never raised a hand to him. In
Damn.
fact, the abuse was so severe that some of Corferon's
Yo, there! Hey! By the way, I hope everyone's good. Can everyone tell me that you had a good day today if you haven't? Like, how...
troops mutinied against him because they refused to beat Lorgar for what was some minor transgression by all accounts. Lorgar, instead of siding with his defenders or even remaining impassive, actually attacked those who were trying to protect him, killing them all. With this in mind, I will return back to my earlier statement. Lorgar was the same as the Emperor in all but 3 regards: accountability, confidence, and self-delusion. At every turn in Lorgar's story, these 3 deficiencies form the core of why Lorgar turned out the way he did. Corferon identified these personality flaws very early on and used them to devastating effect. It did not matter that Corferon was beating him, or having others beat him. It didn't matter that Corferon was emotionally abusive and dismissive of Lorgar's own budding beliefs.
It doesn't matter what you think!
This is not a case of what we call Stockholm Syndrome, where a captive develops an emotional attachment to their captor. At any point when Corferon was hitting Lorgar...
Did he just say that he had Stockholm Syndrome? Because that's a funny thought. That's a funny thought, to have a Primarch with Stockholm Syndrome. And it's true. There are many, many people who would say that the traitor Primarchs are the most human. And you know what? That's funny. You said it wasn't, so it isn't Stockholm Syndrome? What I'm saying, Harley, is this is Warhammer, this is the war, but it was the Emperor's fatal flaw in understanding what you believe can come true. How recently you're starting to learn that lesson. I think the biggest mistake of the Emperor was trying to build mankind. Just listen first. Alright, fine, I will listen. But Cursed Knight, I'm a conspiracy theorist.
Lorgar could have simply falcon punched Corferon into a suborbital trajectory, and both Lorgar and Corferon knew that. What mattered was that Lorgar, in the end, needed to be a follower. Not because he didn't have the confidence to lead, but because in the end he needed 2 things. 1, Lorgar needed someone to blame, and 2, Lorgar needed to be seen. Lorgar's ego demanded that he be at the center of attention, but at the same time Lorgar did not want to be the man sitting in the throne. He never wanted to be that man. He wanted to be the man standing at the throne's left hand, there to reap all the praise and glory alongside the throne, but never there to accept any of the responsibility.
I think humanity was doomed regardless, and I think the Emperor tried to save something that was going to fail ultimately regardless. This is why I think we should kill humans in 40k. I know that would cause a lot of upset, but as a conspiracy theorist, I think the world as a whole would be better, or the universe as a whole, without the humans. Just saying. Corferon couldn't even corrupt Gilliman with the same blade that corrupted Horus. That's actually really cool.
This disposition makes for a very capable diplomat, but after landing on Colchis, these same personality traits were going to form a far different and far more dangerous profession. Despite Corferon's manipulations, Lorgar had already begun to win followers among his own growing faith, the belief in the one god. Lorgar had often had visions of a warrior in bronze armor arriving on Colchis accompanied by a one-eyed giant in blue robes, and naturally, due to the heavily religious nature of the planet, this is all translated into a faith all unto its own. The belief that the One would unite the Four. Initially, Corferon had fought against this, often with abuse, but after the mutiny of Corferon's troops, he fell into line behind Lorgar. This may seem to contradict what I said earlier, but it does not. Lorgar was, for the lack of a better term, religious by this point. It seems very unlikely in the extreme that there were many atheists on Colchis, but now that religious fervor, coupled with his visions of what he believed to be the one god, began to turn into good old-fashioned fanaticism.
Well, during the golden age or the dark age of technology, humans had it pretty good. Denver didn't need to do anything. If it wasn't for the Eldar, everything would be alright. I think no matter what happened, humans would have fucked that up. I think humans naturally, by the pure state of existence, fuck things up. And I think it doesn't matter how good anything could get, because humans will eventually fuck it up. Basically, Emperor joined the wrong team.
Mira, Mazota para yok. Yeme yok. Ey vatandaşlarım. Sizin için varım.
Lorgar began
That was so
preaching of
weird.
the one God to the masses, in effect becoming this new God's prophet, standing at the right hand but blameless to his followers.
I mean, how wouldn't fuck it all up? Exactly, how couldn't they? Of course, you just hate humans. I don't hate humans. I just think they're better as chaos fodder.
After all, if your followers believe that God wills that a city burn with every man, woman, and child inside, mainly because you told them that's what the God wanted, then it's not you committing the act, it's you following the will of a higher power.
Fair.
Eventually, his following, the Brotherhood of Lorgar, split from the main church of Colchis, and what followed was a brutal holy war called the Schism Wars that eventually involved the entire population of the planet. This is where the true danger of Lorgar's mindset comes into full view, and this is where the line between the Primarch and the Emperor becomes the most apparent. The Emperor sought to unite humanity and resorted to ruthless tactics to achieve his goal. There was no negotiation that was going to be made in the face of the basic demands of the Emperor's Imperium, but there was often a good deal of diplomacy.
But this is something, Wolfbane, that I think comes back to your point. The Emperor tried to remove all religion. That obviously wasn't going to happen. It's become very clear since, and also due to the amount of people that were going to praise the gods regardless, that removing all religion was not a good move. He saw it as protection. I saw it as stupidity. As you said, some people do need something to believe in, and unfortunately, they're usually dumb people, but dumb people can still have guns. And that's a mistake the Emperor made in not realizing to err is human and adjusting one's expectations. While I can expect it of Lorgar as a demigod, I sure as shit don't expect the humans to be doing that. I expect humans will fight back the same way the guy died in the last church. Till the last moment, this is their belief, and they will die in that belief. And I'm glad during the Golden Age that they overcame stupidity, but like stupidity is bred and stupidity is born. And the people that are born into stupidity will breed stupidity. And it may not show, it may not be apparent at first, but eventually the same way that, you know, certain political parties still gain power despite being that would be too specific of what I was referencing. Stupid mistakes made every day. Big E could have easily turned Logos worship from Emperor to humanity as a whole. Yes, but also then, could he really blame humanity for the choices that he made? Because him, as a demigod, is supposed to be one of the leaders of humanity. So I think that would be the old switcheroo. Would he then have to take blame? And maybe just teaching him to take fucking blame would have solved at least some of these issues. Logar had the right idea. Faith is one of the most important human things, and the Emperor was so disconnected with humanity that he only saw the danger. I agree with you there, Matteo. Religion is so important to so many people that to just try and remove it entirely would never work. Would never work. You have to give them something to believe in that is beneficial. And if that couldn't have been the Emperor, because he didn't want to be a god, he should have found something that they could pray to.
It was not a common thing for an attack to be ordered straight away.
Crazy humanity's a bad idea, apparently.
Often seen as a matter of grave concern if it were known to happen. There were a fair amount of wars to achieve compliance, but it was seldom that they were waged maliciously. And finally, at the end of the day, all the blame landed on the shoulders of the Emperor himself. The Schism Wars were a far different matter, with Lorgar massacring cities who stood against him. It is an easy estimation that Lorgar killed upwards of a third of the population of the planet in both the conquering of it in the name of the one god, as well as the purges of the disbelievers that followed.
See what I mean?
This is the distinct difference between the Emperor and Lorgar. The Emperor ordered the deaths of billions in the name of reuniting humanity, but only if needed, and only the religious who refused to retract in the face of repeated attempts at reason were put to the sword.
You can't just kill people for that, though!
Responsibility for these actions himself. Lorgar ordered the same in the name of his god, and there was...
And I might not be the biggest girly man believer, but he realised smartly that the ecclesiarchy needs to exist in some form. And it will always exist in some form. It's more about redirecting that that prayer and those godlike wishes to something else, to something that they can control.
There's no chance for retraction, but Lorgar was never to blame for the horrific atrocities he committed. Not to the Oswald's followers.
He is an arrogant as shit.
He was doing them for his god and not for himself. Note my
Agreed.
sarcasm in this. To be absolutely perfectly clear, the only time the Emperor acted in war the same as Lorgar did is when the Emperor was dealing with Xeno empires. After the conclusion of the Schism War and the purges that followed, Lorgar proclaimed that the one god would arrive within a year, which the Emperor did, coming down to land on Colchis with Magnus at his side, fulfilling Lorgar's prophecy of the future. When the Emperor first met Lorgar, Lorgar immediately knelt and embraced him as a god, and continued to do so even as the Emperor denied his divinity. In fact, contrary to popular belief,
But that's the arrogance. He thinks because he's seen so much of humanity, he understands it. But realistically, he may have done better getting a psych degree. I think it's a more pragmatic choice than agreeing with them. Trying to get rid of it is more trouble than it's worth. I completely agree with you. I don't think religion can have been worked out the way that it did, which is why I said during my last church video, I don't agree with religion being a good thing. I don't think religion is the best thing. However, I do understand that it is a necessity in certain ways. Yeah, like he was just like, I've seen so much of humanity. I know what humans need. I'm right, you're wrong. I'm big, you're small. I'm right, you're wrong, and there's nothing you can do about it. He went full Miss Trunchbull on humanity. He did. Oh yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think the Emperor's arrogance is 100% his fatal flaw. And it is something that crops up in every single one of his... You are fucking wrong. Miss Trunchbull is not hot. In every single one of his issues, it comes down to, a lot of the time, believing he knows better and enacting how he knows better in ways that are detrimental to the population. Get hecty.
the Emperor denied his divinity multiple times to Lorgar, which Lorgar only took as further proof that the Emperor was divine.
But this is the thing! Listen, Dylan! He's seen enough of humanity, he should know he didn't know! If you've watched humanity, humanity always does its worst when it thinks it knows. When it's like, this is the right thing to do. You don't fucking know! None of us fucking know! That is his arrogance! He's seen enough to know that he shouldn't know! He's not gonna know! Humans are unpredictable! Humans are different! You can't treat a sweeping declaration of actions against a population of people. The Emperor should have seen enough to know that he was dumb. By the way, I'm not yelling at you guys. I'm very passionate about the Emperor being an arsehole. But I think he should have known that he couldn't know. And he couldn't do a sweeping action to every single person and it would be okay. He should have collected intel on individualistic groups and individualistic planets and then tailored his approach to each planet. What would this planet benefit from? When Lionel Johnson returned and he found the state of the Imperium and had the worship of the Emperor as a god, Lion had the same reaction as Gullum and he was pissed. Yeah, we're all pissed. We're all pissed about it. But listen, you know what else we are? Passionate. We will fix things. We will make the Imperium die. As a family.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
What kind of crack-headed bullshit is that? I
Yes!
wish my bank would tell me I was a billionaire, and as much as I denied saying I was a billionaire, they just kept on throwing money at me until I was a billionaire. That would make me really fucking happy. I'm just saying. The celebration on Colchis lasted for what was said to be months, with the Emperor frequently showing his disapproval of the religion of the world, which just...
Has anyone ever thought the Emperor may be autistic? I award you no points and may God have mercy on your soul. Fair, fair. But God will never have mercy on me. But have y'all ever thought the Emperor's autistic and he just doesn't understand emotions? The Suns were a backup plan. He wanted his perpetuals to rule the humans. Like, I get that. I get that. I do. I understand what the Primarch Project's purpose was. Exactly. He killed them all. He was like... Yep. It says it all. He does just react. He's honestly had a few meltdowns in his time. He really has. I'm going to put him on a list of famous autistic people.
Just so happened to be worshipping him. In fact, the Emperor was so forceful in showing his disapproval to Lorgar that the fanatical Primarch actually began to hide his faith. And eventually, despite the Emperor's misgivings, he gave command of the Imperial Heralds to Lorgar.
Who's Latara Saren? Don't want to know. I think it's less autism and more just distance, I suppose, might be the word, because he's so far away from the baseline human it would be difficult to understand regular people. Sounds like autism to me. No, I'm joking. But yeah, I get it. He saw 200 generations of people, and yeah, it could be difficult to maintain your humanity. But this is why you can't make decisions on your own if you're just gonna stay there forever, judging them like loudly and being like, that was a bad decision. Like, listen here, Emperor. Easy to say with the knowledge of 200 years. Not gonna work on people. They're not gonna be like, oh, he's lived for so long. Let's just listen to everything he fucking says. We are human. We must fight back! And like superpowers wise, yeah, also, he does have some superpowers. Ooh! And what happened with Latara? Can I have some goss on Latara, please? You're slightly autistic, Angelo? I'm autistic. So, fist bump. Hey! Dylan, did you just say I'm not a superhero? Mateo, did you just call me Haley? Alright. I'll have a look at that, Liam. Okay, I will. Mateo, Liam, I got you. I'll watch it. Can't believe Dylan just said I'm not a superhero.
A legion, ironically enough, whose stated goal was to remove the taint of religion from the galaxy at large while unifying humanity.
Actually, you know what? That was so upsetting, it's gonna give me death. I just had to show how upset I was.
Lorgar was obsessed with either hearing himself talk or having others read his words, and in the early days after he joined the Great Crusade, he penned several works that were harshly critical of religion at large. But he remained completely silent on the nature of his father. The converting of his legion came in the form of one whispered word at a time, and careful assignment placements to lose Terra-born legionnaires by pure attrition, replacing them with Colchissian stock who were already well indoctrinated. This was not a natural phenomenon. This was a carefully planned out and orchestrated series of events that Lorgar himself set into motion in order to slowly convert the entirety of his legion into his religion. This was not a slapdash operation or just an overly devoted worshipper spreading the good news of the faith. It was a coordinated dance of events to change the spiritual makeup of a legion without attracting outside attention. We're going to stop there for a few moments to consider one very important question that outside of context makes no sense. It was clear to anyone with a pulse that upon showing up on Colchis, the planet itself as well as the Primarch were extremely religious.
The thing you need to remember is the Emperor can see the future. He can predict 1,000 different possibilities to a larger degree than his fellow perpetuals, and that's why I think he was so bad. And that goes directly to my theory. If you see good, you will try and make that good and most likely change it. And if you see bad, you will most likely try and avoid it. Then you'll walk right into it. And Angelo, What are you having for dinner? Have a good dinner.
To someone such as the Emperor, the fact that Lorgar was a fanatic would have been readily apparent. The Emperor's stated goal of the Crusade was to unite all of humanity under an atheistic government. So why would the Emperor not only allow Lorgar to live, but also allow him to recruit directly from the highly religious population of Colchis? The answer to that is based completely on the information at hand, and the answer is darker than you probably would think. There are several things worth noticing throughout the early days of the Word Bearers. The first is that Lorgar stopped worshipping the Emperor openly, taking his beliefs private until the quiet conversions had reached a point where he could openly worship again in his own ranks. It was only then that the pace of the Word Bearers in the Crusade began to slow, as once the majority of the Word Bearers had been converted, then Lorgar could easily explain why he was lingering to those who would then convert the worlds they conquered. The Word-Bearer Legion slowed their pace of conquest to an absolute crawl, achieving not Imperial compliance, but Lorgar's version of Imperial compliance. The Emperor knew very well what was going on. Reports came in from first the Word-Bearers and then outside of the Word-Bearers that were actively informing the Emperor about the changes within the 17th Legion. Anyone who focuses on the lore surrounding the Unifications Wars as well as the Great Crusades know very well the Emperor was set on completely disbanding religion in his...
What do you mean potato gravy? Is that like UK gravy? But fish cakes sound good. Can I have some? Oh, well, Fane, I love talking with you because like I can get really passionate and shit and like get into my points because you always give very detailed explanations, and you also help my understanding because like you leave some of the longest comments with like full explanations of things that I didn't understand, and it helps me become a better lore expert, and I appreciate you. Oh, I hope you're okay, Dan. I'll see you soon. Just remember, kick them. That'll solve everything. Trust me. Convert them to Slanesh.
entirety. But for some reason, a reason I will soon go into, the Emperor was content for the time being to allow Lorgar to continue with his worship. So why was it allowed in the first place? Why did not only the Emperor allow Lorgar to live, but also give him a full legion to have the opportunity to spread his face to the stars beyond Colchis? On the
Angelo, that sounds amazing. Can I have some? Like, I have mash and gravy all the time.
outside, this makes little to no sense. But as I have stated several times already in this series, context is everything, and for this decision, context is needed. The reason behind the Emperor allowing Lorgar to live has nothing to do with Lorgar himself, the Primarch of the 17th Legion. However, it has everything to do with the Imperium's attitudes before the Emperor met Lorgar, with the 2nd and 11th Primarchs, and most importantly an event known as the Rangdan Genocides. All that is known about the 2nd and 11th Legions is that they were still around by 930 M31, from perhaps the only lasting record of their legions participating in the Rangdan Genocides. Imperial records have been completely purged of all other information surrounding the two legions and their primarchs. The only evidence that they existed to begin with comes from a single line in the Guardsman's uplifting primer and a few ancient plinths that stand empty. What is known is that sometime between 930 M31 and 964 M31, all traces of the existence of the 2nd and 11th were nearly wiped out, and the event was traumatic even to the Emperor himself.
Liam, I'm watching Old Man. You can't take me out now. You gotta at least let me finish the series before you try and shoot me.
It is known that Lehman Russ and his legion were involved, but it is not actually clear when this happened. The timeline of events is not clear to say the least. Between the 2nd and 11th Primarch, however, shame is only placed seemingly on the 2nd, while the 11th is not mentioned in these terms in the few lines of dialogue and personal musings on the two Primarchs and their lore.
Nice, Vance.
What is clear is that whenever it did occur, it was still very fresh in everyone's mind. Whatever occurred was severe enough that even Sanguinius was concerned about bringing a genetic flaw within the Blood Angels Legion to his father.
Angela, you don't mean Swindon in the UK, do you? And I will definitely have dinner with your nana. That sounds amazing. I love home cooking. Home cooking is a secret love of mine. I love when other people cook for me, so I don't have to do it. But also like home style cooking. So I may one day take you up on that.
fear that it would result in the destruction of his legion and himself.
Let's not do anything
What
without
can
getting
be
regret!
implied is a genetic mutation similar in nature destroyed at least one of the legions, and from the words of Belisarius' call, we can infer that the Primarch was ultimately responsible. The fates of these two legions and their Primarchs answer a few very pressing questions. The first is
Don't
why
make me do it.
Lorgar was allowed to live in the first place. Due to the information in the lore, it was known that Lorgar was met by the Emperor only a few years before the beginning of the Ragdan Genocides. While the meeting between the Emperor went well from the standpoint of the Emperor, with Lorgar eventually not speaking of him as a god anymore, at least
Hell yeah.
openly, it still left a good deal on the Emperor's mind. The extermination of a legion was not even a thing to be considered, and while Lorgar's religious tendencies were a problem for the Emperor, the concept of killing one of his own creations was clearly not on his mind. Whatever course of action the Emperor would have taken regarding Lorgar's religious tendencies was completely interrupted by the Ragdan Genocides.
I need an exterminatus button that will just blow up whatever's on the screen, because that would be hilarious. I'm just going to state that for the record. I'm going to look into how to do that, because I think it'd be really cool to just exterminatus things that I don't like. I had to believe that the second Primarch straight up refused the Emperor and he killed him, and that explains why he did the Angron kidnap thing. It would make sense, and I do also hope that there's some hope for humanity that at least one of the Primarchs was like, nah mate, you dumb.
The Ragdan Genocides can easily be considered the second most destructive war in Imperial history, with only the Horus Heresy itself surpassing it, and even then it's only an estimation. It involved the forces of 7 legions, and is known that 3 legions brought their entire strength to bear. Several dozen Titan legions were obliterated, and during the 3rd campaign alone, nearly 50,000 Space Marines were killed in a...
Yeah, but I don't want it to end the stream, Mateo, that's the problem. Joke's on you, you're in Space Wolf territory. Press that button and all the Space Wolves are coming a month of tears. 2.0. Damn. Still think it'd be funny though. That was Angron. Exactly, Angron knew what was up.
Single battle. Entire human inhabited sectors were cleansed of life. The Dark Angels, having recently discovered their Primarch, were at a strength of 100,000 legionnaires by the war's start, but at the end, they were under 10,000. The Death Guard was so depleted that their Primarch Mortarion actually authorized emergency acceptance of recruits that did not come from his homeworld of Barbaros, something that he simply did not do on principle. The Space Wolves were likewise extremely depleted, but numbers or facts about how extremely are not apparent. During this time is when the Dark Angels obviously ceded the title of the largest legion, and they ceded it to the Ultramarines for reasons that are obvious, yet still hold a bit of mystery. And it is also in Horus Lupercal, who was occupied far away from the Genocides, rapidly ascended in the eyes of his fellows.
I am heresy.
For decades afterwards, the crusade would slow as multiple legions, Titan legions, and the God Emperor alone knows how many guardsmen needed to recuperate from the losses sustained. Even some of the Space Marines who had participated in the war were so affected by the war that they were rotated away from frontline service.
Alhaka, the second option is no. It says no. It says no, you haven't. Can't you see it? No, I will now. Thanks, Sternly. Because we've all got to thank Stern. For every time I look at my stream, at some point I'll just go, fuck, I haven't told anyone to upvote. And I know Stern will yell at me, so I gotta do it.
Take a moment and consider that. Many Space Marines were so affected by this they could no longer participate in war. The only time the number of Astartes dead would even be rivaled would be during the Isfahan 5 drop site massacre, where 3 full legions were nearly wiped out, and even then it is up to speculation, as we do not have solid numbers of the dead in the Genocides, as most of the records are sealed or redacted. It was either during or after the Genocide that the 2nd and 11th Legions were wiped out. After the loss of the 2nd and 11th, it was no longer considered impossible for a legion to attack another legion, or for a Primarch to kill another Primarch, even though the thought of it was still clearly unthinkable to the legions that were not present. Even after what befell the 2nd and 11th, an Ultramarine was censored for theoretically proposing a scenario where Astartes fought Astartes. What is clear is that the fate of the 2nd and 11th was forbidden to speak of by the Emperor himself, and it was the order that even heretic Astartes that lived during that time still follow.
Can you guys hear that song in the background? Because it sounds like a song that I know.
It was due to these conflicts that the nature of the Emperor's interaction with Lorgar changed completely, as well as his relationships with his other sons, who now knew that the Emperor would order the destruction of a legion if the situation was considered dire enough. It is almost worth saying that the road to the Horus Heresy did not begin near a destroyed city called Monarchia. It actually started with the Ragdan Genocides. So now we come back to the first question I sought to answer. Why did the Emperor allow Lorgar to live in the first place? I said the answer to that was a dark one, and it is...
Thank you for the follow-up.
...is this. It is my belief that after the Emperor had seen the religious fervor displayed in Lorgar, the Emperor had no intention on him surviving the Great Crusade. Lorgar's personality had been tailor-made to fill a specific role within the Imperium, that of an ambassador and diplomat. But the aspect of religion as well as the influence of Cor Pharon had twisted those same personality traits in a far different direction, turning Lorgar into a zealot. By the time Lorgar met the Emperor, he had become a complete fanatic, and in the face of that, the Emperor knew well that he had no real recourse unless Lorgar himself changed. The Emperor viewed his sons as tools, and Lorgar was supposed to be a flat-tipped screwdriver with a soft foam grip, meant to gently drive the point home and make life painless for everyone. Instead, Lorgar was a book of hymnals. Well, at least it still functions as a hammer, at least for a little while.
I have no idea what song it is, but it's a good song. Okay, look everyone, we got a little out of hand when someone pulled a bolter on Harley. So why don't we just put our bolters and guns down and just forget this ever happened. I'll have you know, we've already moved on from this, because y'all know that if you pull a gun on me, and try and bring me down, I won't watch things that you asked me to, so get hecked.
Wait,
Lorgar could stop saying he worshipped the Emperor, but even then the Emperor knew full well that he still did. It is my belief that the Emperor had decided to roll the dice with Lorgar, giving his zealous son a chance to change, and if not, there was another more final option he had in store. During the Unification Wars, the backbone of the Emperor's military forces were genetically modified super soldiers known as the Thunder Warriors. The Thunder Warriors were actually stronger, faster, and more combat capable than the Space Marines who replaced them, but they were far less stable in both temperament and genetics. It is an Imperial legend that during the last battle of the Unification Wars, the Thunder Warriors died to the last man on the slopes of Mount Ararat, fighting the enemies of the Emperor. The only accurate bit of information in that legend is that the Thunder Warriors died. One of the greatest lies in Imperial history covers up a horrific truth, that the Emperor of Mankind repaid the Thunder Warriors by ordering his personal guard, the Adeptus Custodes, to destroy them all as they had fulfilled their purpose. Of all the genetically modified Thunder Warriors who fought and died for the Emperor, only a few are known to have lived from the genocide of their entire genetic strain. It is a truth that if it came out, would have meant almost immediate civil war.
If I remember later tonight, I'll ask Goldman if he remembers what music he uses during his stream later. Like whatever the song was, it was a good one. I liked it. So yeah, that'd be pretty cool. It's pretty easy to defeat you. All you have to do is a ritual call Slanesh and tell her you worship Cone, and she'll drop you like a sack of potatoes. I think she wouldn't be silly enough to believe y'all, because there's just so much evidence of me supporting Slanesh. It's just there's too much of it, you know. I think everyone knows I'm a Slanesh follower, and thank you, Liam. Do let me know.
The Emperor had taken an inconvenience and turned that inconvenience into a tale of sacrifice and loyalty that had endured. If he had done it once, there was no reason he wouldn't have done it again. But if this was truly the decision he was going to make, it was interrupted entirely by the Ragdan Genocides. By the time the wars were over and the Emperor had a chance to follow up on the reports that he had been receiving regarding the actions of his son Lorgar, there were 2 destroyed legions, 3 that were depleted beyond half strength, several more that needed to recuperate from serious losses, and scores of other military forces that had been either outright destroyed or needed to replenish over half their strength. The Great Crusade at that point was only being pressed forward by the human expedition fleets and the remaining legions that simply did not engage in the genocides, one of which was Lorgar's. In the face of this, the Emperor could simply no longer afford to allow the snail's crawl of Lorgar's legion to continue. It was in the aftermath of all of this that the Emperor called Roboute Guilliman to his side, who now controlled the largest legion in the Imperium, and set off to the world of Kur and the city of Monarchia. When most are introduced to what happened at Monarchia, the most common reaction is bewilderment.
What time is this Among Us stream? Because that would be kind of fun. I'm too basic? What the fuck do you mean I'm too basic? Alright, now we're getting the guns back out. What the fuck do you mean I'm too basic for Slanesh? I have 34 weapons right next to me. I could rip her skin off in ways that she would fucking love!
Simply because it's the first time that you're meeting many of these characters in the lore. As the Ultramarines had the 500 worlds of Ultramar,
Yeah, true.
the Wordbearers also had their little pocket empire, and its crown jewel was Monarchia. It was a city purely devoted to the worship of the Emperor, and many Wordbearers considered it the perfect city. A fleet arrived in the orbit of planet Kur, and the Ultramarines deployed in full Legion strength against the city in what can only be called a planetary assault drop. They were accompanied by members of the Emperor's personal guard, the Custodes. The occupied city of Monarchia was easily taken, and the Ultramarines herded the population out of the city.
Yeah, if you would have hit me, like, literally just at me in the Discord when it's going, if I'm awake, I'd well, like, be happy to come back. Yeah, basic. Gilliman at the time was too prideful to help his brother in this way, to the crutch to support him. He wasn't Horus or Sanguinius. It's true, but then Horus helped, and look what happened there. I'm not currently freebasing heroin. I'll freebase... I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop because I'm gonna get in trouble if I say what I was gonna say next.
Many civilians were killed in the process as they rioted against the orders. Once a certain time frame had been reached, the civilian population was out of the city, and the fleet in orbit opened fire, destroying Monarchia completely. It was only then that the civilian population of Kur was allowed to send a message to the Wordbearers. From the outside, this looks absolutely out of character for both the Emperor and the Ultramarines in particular. The Ultramarines were known for their absolute iron discipline, and yet they opened fire on civilians who had at best been throwing pottery at them in completely understandable fear and anxiety. What's clear in the interactions between the Ultramarines and some of the civilians is they were unhappily following orders that Guilliman himself was none too happy to issue. These orders to open fire on the civilians who resisted the evacuation order came from the Emperor himself. Once again, it's time for context. To any who think the Ultramarines wouldn't fire on a civilian population, I invite you to think again. They most definitely would, and their tally of compliances confirms it. They may not have enjoyed the orders, and the writing supports that they did not, but it was far less harsh than it could have been. Evidence of this comes from the dialogue between a young woman named Cyrene and a Thunderhawk pilot who tries to reason with her to do what she's been asked to do, and only losing patience when she continues to call the Emperor a god. The population had been openly fighting the presence of the Ultramarines, but the crackdown had been equally harsh. In truth, the city was in a de facto state of rebellion against the edicts of the Imperial Truth, and completely out of the borders of Imperial compliance. Also realize that if Lorgar had not landed on Colchis itself, the Emperor would have most likely had it scoured of life, considering the nature of the religion that existed there. That includes killing civilians. A lot of them. The fact the Emperor ordered the evacuation at all was a mercy, considering how organized and open religions were usually treated. But it is a mercy that many forget was a mercy at all. Remember, this was a message not targeted at the civilians of Kur. It was a message targeted clearly at the Wordbearers.
Why did they do Serene dirty? Give me the information, Mateo. Even as an Imperium Lava in chat, who thinks they wouldn't open fire on civilians, every Legion 100% would. I completely agree with you. Every single Legion would at some point, if they felt like they needed to, kill civilians. Or kill some civilians in order to save others. So, like, if it was a case of, well, we can save this 100 civilians, but we gotta kill these 7, they'd do it without even questioning it.
The city's destruction also needs to be put into context.
For the greater good, if anyone's seen Hot Fuzz.
This was the Emperor's final warning to Lorgar, and he needed to be shown the results. It is clear from the lore that the Emperor tried to reason with him more than once, but Lorgar refused to be swayed before this incident. The Emperor needed to show where Lorgar's path would lead in a way that would brook no further argument. The destruction of Lorgar's perfect city, a city architecturally designed for the purpose of the glorification of the Emperor as a god, was the example. When the Word Bearers broke warp, they came in ready to fight, but not knowing who they were going to be fighting. When the civilian leadership sent their distress call, they had identified the Ultramarines as their attackers. The concept of fighting another legion stole the thunder from the Word Bearers, and they were stunned when they were ordered to assemble in full legion strength in the ashes of Monarchia. When Lorgar came down, his Stormbird was flanked by several Ultramarine Thunderhawks. No one could miss the fact that the weapons of the Thunderhawks were locked onto the Stormbird of Lorgar. This was not an escort, it was a prisoner transfer.
You going to jail now? You going to jail? You going to jail?
Once the Legion had assembled planetside, they were soon attended by 100 Ultramarines, which many viewed as an insult, and then directly addressed by Malkador the Sigillite, who himself was accompanied by Rabute Gilliman. Malkador tried to reason with the irate Primarch of the Word Bearers, only to get backhanded for his efforts.
That's an amazing clip.
Once Malkador recovered enough to speak, he called to the Emperor himself. As the Emperor arrived in a flash of teleportation, he once again tried to reason with Lorgar. And while some criticized the discussion between the Emperor and Lorgar, what was clear to me is the Emperor was tired of making these same points over and over again to his wayward son.
Just tell me how we can something so simple up. Enough's enough. I'm done. All together.
Can I just say, I fucking love Hell's Kitchen. There should be more Hell's Kitchen inclusions in Warhammer, and I would do this daily.
Off. Get out. Get out.
Did you kick her? I told you, kicking is the solution. 9 out of 10 times.
In the end, the Emperor set out to do one single
I
thing.
agree with you. Wolfan, I think an Emperor book could be important.
Faith in front of his legion. He forced the entirety of the Lord Bearers' legion to kneel before him in the ashes of their perfect city. And while some of the Word Bearers railed against this forced subjugation, it came with a point. He told them that of every legion, the Word Bearers alone had failed him.
What are you?
An idiot sandwich.
Idiot sandwich what?
An idiot sandwich, Chef Ramsay.
Erecting monuments to lies and driving the population of their conquered worlds into a false faith. He told them that this was the end that they were heading towards, and the meaning to everyone should have been obvious. This was the final warning. There would be no more discussion. The impact of the Emperor's words was more destructive than the bombardment of the city itself. As the Emperor teleported back into orbit, Lorgar was left facing his brother on the planet below and lashed out at the Primarch of the Ultramarines, accusing him of drawing satisfaction from seeing his legion shamed. When Gilliman denied this, saying Lorgar was over-imaginative, Lorgar shrugged Gilliman with his Crozius hammer.
I love the anime references too. If anime and Hell's Kitchen was like more involved in 40k, I would have the time of my life.
This was the first time that either legion had seen a Primarch attack another Primarch, as neither of them had been there for what happened to the 2nd and 11th Legion. The entirety of the Word Bearers Legion, before Gilliman had even hit the ground, were training their bolters on the Ultramarines. And the 100 Ultramarines had their bolters trained right back at them. Both sides were in disbelief at what was transpiring. But several Word Bearers recalled, wishing that someone had actually started firing. This was not in itself signs of early chaos corruption in the Word Bearers. This is just a simple and natural reaction to the events transpiring in front of them. In the end, Lorgar had misjudged Gilliman, for in truth Gilliman did not even want to be there. For all of the talk that Gilliman and the Emperor had planned this activity together,
Yeah, I think jumpy is like an understatement for what these guys were. Gilliam and his mind were really thinking about refusing to attack civilians and arguing with his father. In my opinion, I think the infirmary just used the Dark Angels for this. I don't think they should have killed the civilians. I think what they should have done is burn down the relics. Burn down the relics, show mercy to the people, be like, is this what you think your God wants? You think that they want to be burning down your relics and your items of faith? They shouldn't have killed the people, because the people would have been better. That would be a waste of our talents. Curse Knight, come on. What are you so bloodthirsty for?
There is very little evidence whatsoever that Gilliman had anything to do with the planning of this event. Gilliman himself was not comfortable with the idea of shaming a legion, and much less comfortable with his legion being used in the process, and this bothered him for years. The Emperor wanted the Primarch of the Ultramarines there as an example for the Word Bearers to set themselves to, but wound up placing a target on the backs of the Knights of Ultramar that would eventually be shot at in the Second Great Betrayal of the Horus Heresy at the Battle of Calth. The situation rapidly defused as Lorgar's anger bled away, replaced by the shame of what had just happened. The Word Bearers returned to their ships to lick their wounded pride, further wounded now that they knew that they would be accompanied by a force of Custodes to watch their actions and report back to the Emperor. While they were not around for what happened to the 2nd and 11th Legion, the Word Bearers were well aware of what Monarchia meant for them as a legion, and so did Lorgar. Lorgar's faith was completely shattered, as well.
Well, I know they did that as well, but like, changing the minds of the people would have hurt Lorgar more. He knows all them people died following his faith. Imagine if they'd all turned away from his faith and been like, you know what? He's got a point. Maybe he's not a god. Do you think if he had had to face the reality of his people going, no, you were wrong, that wouldn't have crippled him more internally? Because I'm telling you, it would have.
Was his legion. But as the Word Bearers went back into orbit, the only
The
true
relics did not
mistake the
fire the
Emperor made
crowd.
at Monarchia came into effect. Often when people discuss the
That's so
Horus
funny.
Heresy, they bring up Monarchia as a prime example of the Emperor's lack of judgment. In truth,
It may save time, but undoctrinizing them people... Well, we do have time. We obviously have time. We have time. I'm sorry. The Emperor's done a lot of shit in his life. He had enough time to leave a couple of people there to go, hey, did you know you're all wrong and the Emperor dislikes this? And like throw down all the religious icons and burn them in front of them and go, the Emperor's disappointed in you. Do you not think at least a couple of them would have been like, are we doing the wrong thing here? Because the Emperor's not happy with us. And then Lorgar would have had to deal with the reality that he was dumb.
in the planning and execution of Monarchia, the Emperor had done exactly what he had set out to do. Lorgar was facing down the truth of what he had done not only to himself and to his legion and the planets they had conquered, but his homeworld. His god had burned his faith away and burned it to ash in such a brutal manner that he was actually facing his errors in judgment. He spitefully recalled the Schism War and how he had burned his homeworld in the name of faith, a faith he now knew in his heart was wronged. If Lorgar was facing this alone, or with another set of company captains, this would have radically altered the future of not only the Word Bearers, but the entire Imperium. The destruction of Monarchia was meant to be brutal. It was meant to be a savage slap to the face of a Primarch and a Legion who had not listened to reason. While one can lament the fact that the city, and in fact many other cities on the planet had been leveled, and that the civilian population had suffered, one can also wonder why the Emperor would order such a thing. But it is easy to forget that in its expansion the Word Bearers themselves had done far worse, as had every other Legion in the Crusade.
Bane, the Emperor, wanted to send us a final warning, not destroy a Legion, sadly. But this is the thing. I think you would have done better to destroy the work that they put in without killing the people. Because then you remain a hero to the people, and Lorgar becomes a laughingstock to the people he, convinced. Yeah, I know. Lorgar was dumb, but the people may have been savable.
Even the act of forcing the word bearers to kneel in the ashes of the city had a symbolic purpose, as one of the ceremonies of the word bearers was to observe solemn rites in the ashes of cities on worlds that they had conquered. If you want a synonym for conquered in this regard, obliterated.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
The Emperor's mistake in all this was not the destruction of Monarchia, and it was not the humbling of the word-bearers, because his actions actually had their intended effect. Lorgar's faith had been utterly crushed, and his legion, while shamed, was well under the will of its Primarch. The only mistake the Emperor made at Monarchia, and with Lorgar in general, was not putting a bolt round in the head of Corferon, and not putting a second bolt round in the head of Erebus. It is a joke in 40k to say that Lorgar was at fault for everything, but in absolute truth, at least half of that responsibility falls to Corferon and Erebus. Just when Lorgar was on the verge of overcoming the religious indoctrination that his foster father had put him through,
It's the Emperor, of course he's going to do the worst thing possible, yeah, but that's what annoys me about the Emperor. It's not how an empire works. That's why empires are fucking shit. Nothing Big E said after that would change his mind. They perhaps to show him instead, and it almost worked. See, but this is the thing. I think having his own people turn against him and be indoctrinized would have had more of a lasting effect. But a final warning that if you do this again, we're coming back. Lionel Johnson would have been the be-all and end-all of the situation. Oh.
Corferon and Erebus were quick to capitalize on the eviscerated ego that the Emperor had left behind. I need to take a break for a few minutes before I continue. It was my firm belief, due to the subject of today's Voxcast, I needed to take certain precautions.
Fuck Erebus!
Die, heretic! Die! 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 Burn in holy fire!
Chevrolet, are you enjoying the game?
Yes, Commissar. I thought purging the Xenos was fun in person, but this is a welcome distraction. Did you tell them that you opened a Patreon?
Yes.
Like and subscribe to the Voxcast?
Yes. Lorgar, you fucking prick. Lorgar's largest character flaw, by a high measure, was his susceptibility to delusion.
That's the fucking funniest voice note ever. Oh my god. And I love that he made it 69-420. He has got my respect for that alone.
In turn, believing even the most obvious lies about his own nature. He desired to believe the best of himself, and both Corferon and Erebus knew well how to manipulate those flaws. Lorgar could not see the expression that Erebus did on the face of Corferon. Erebus saw Corferon for what he wanted and always has wanted. The hunger for power and the desire to control. All Lorgar's dumbass could see was the delusion. One that Corferon had maintained even if he had beat the shit out of Lorgar as a child on Colchis. Lorgar saw a father who grieved for his son, where only a few minutes ago, Lorgar was looking inwards at his mistakes. Corferon and Erebus just slowly began to guide the Primarch toward a plan that the two of them had laid in wait just for a day like this one, when Lorgar's faith would be ruptured and could be reforged in a new direction. One of the most laughable lies that Corferon told Lorgar, and Lorgar actually fucking believed, is that Lorgar could not commit acts of cruelty with a smile on his face. Bullshit! Lorgar had only come a few hours away, in truth, from reforging himself and his legion. But all of a sudden, the manipulations of Corferon and Erebus, and now the word bearers on a path of damnation, and the only thing it took was really soft-spoken flattery and appeals to Lorgar's sensitive little ego. While the Emperor had achieved exactly what he wanted to achieve, the lack of time spent around his son and his legion left him without a singular, critical piece of information.
He's a very strange young man.
He's an idiot.
Lorgar was a puppet. While not afraid of Corferon or Erebus or in any way physically challenged by them, Lorgar was completely subject to the words and whims of his foster father and was under the thumb of the old priest.
I don't even know where that quote came from. I forgot that we had quotes on this thing. So Alpaca, they're not my Twitch quotes. They're specifically YouTube quotes. I think that's the only one I've got. The Emperor bonding with all his sons. What a silly concept. I know, right?
The problem was that Lorgar never even fully realized it until far after his fall. Or maybe he actually did realize it, but he was too much of a pussy to actually do anything about it. Or maybe he did realize it, but just didn't want to do anything about it because he could always turn around and be like, "Daddy, you told me that this was good." What a fucking phenomenal prick in any regards. I have no sympathy, no pity, and I just do not give a shit about anybody saying that Lorgar was just a good old boy who was trying to do things the right way. Fuck him, fuck that. When some people read the story of Lorgar on the First Heretic, they don't seem to grasp the full reality of what is happening and the subtlety of the words at play. At no point when I reread the story of Lorgar's fall do I even begin to feel pity for Lorgar or Aurelian. Lorgar's fall was not dictated by the Emperor. Because, unpopular opinion, Monarchia was not a mistake of the Emperor at all. The massive casualties of the Rangdan genocides forced the Emperor to take drastic action so the great...
Okay, I slightly disagree. I think it's both of their faults, but I do think Lorgar was never pushed into this. I think this was Lorgar being Lorgar.
Crusade.
He is your idiot, Mateo, and you know what? I like you, and therefore I will put up with Mateo. I'll put up with Lorgar for you, Mateo. I'll put up with him for you, Mateo. Didn't say it wouldn't have worked if the Emperor had just stopped being such a horrible father and had his mortician Conrad and Lorgar close to his hip 45 minutes. It may have worked. May have worked.
It wouldn't stall. In this drastic action, he made an extremely powerful statement, but that statement did not cause Lorgar's fall. The actions of the Emperor did not set Lorgar on the course to chaos. Lorgar's fall was decided because at no point could the Primarch be honest with himself. He would look for any way out, any excuse, and grab hold of it to keep the truth at bay. Even in the present age of the Imperium, Lorgar continues to hold on to his faith and fanaticism to distract himself from the truth. That truth that the...
Can I just say I love the inclusion of the paperclip? Wasn't he everyone's homie? Like, wasn't he just everyone's homie? Be honest with me. He was the man back in the day. Did anyone else turn him into the dog when that got installed? Because I did. I used to switch him to the puppy because it was the cutest thing ever.
Emperor revealed to him an monarchy in such a way it shattered a zealot's faith. Lorgar was not the kind, gentle, and loving soul that he had allowed himself to be convinced that he was through endless amounts of bullshit. He was not a merciful...
Oh, I used to love the little robot, but I couldn't get over the dog and the cat, so like it was those for me.
Lord who can...
I used to have because I had like different computers, so I had the cat on one and the dog on the other, so that I didn't feel like I had to pick.
Not commit atrocity with a smile on his face. He was never interested in the truth at all. He was never interested in the betterment of mankind and a hope of a better tomorrow. He was neither a poet, a scholar, or a visionary. He was not possessed of unshakable loyalty or devotion. He never genuinely cared for humanity. He was never a dreamer, and the last thing he ever approached being was introspective. Lorgar was a weak-willed, genocidal zealot, one who would loudly and vocally lament the decisions he made that brought the galaxy to burn. One who would loudly and visibly proclaim that he never wanted the truth to be like this, but because it was the truth, he just had to pursue it. One who tried to deny his accountability in planning the Horus Heresy when he was the motherfucker who initiated the damn thing. These last three statements are telling, because even the most self-deluded idiot eventually breaks the needle on their own bullshit meter. And when you strip the sheer acreage of bullshit away from Lorgar, what you're left with is a pathetic, insecure, and disgustingly unworthy Primarch who didn't even have the courage to own up to their own actions.
LMAO.
In fact, of all the traitor Primarchs, Lorgar is the only one whose reasons for turning I simply cannot respect in the slightest. Conrad cursed turned because his disposition drove him insane and his latent need for justice demanded he keep going until someone actually truly punish him for his crimes. Magnus the Red turned out of complete and utter necessity to save himself and his legion due to scheming by Horus himself. Perturabo was a man who only truly wished to create, but because of the lot in life he drew...
The dog would bust out a flamethrower for one of his animations. I know, and I loved it. Okay, in this video, I'm not saying Lorgar was kind and gentle person, far from it. He's somewhat sympathetic because mistakes on both sides caused the fallout to unfold. The only thing he can't really deal with is mistakes, so what better than to deal with it? Yes, blame everyone else and worship hell gods. But see what the funniest thing is? He was built off the Emperor, because the Emperor can't own up to his own mistakes either.
He was only allowed to destroy. He was a Primarch who hated the very military actions that he was actually the best at. And that hatred turned to pure bitterness at the thanklessness of the task he performed. Fulgrim had the very core of his nature perverted by Slaanesh, his arrogance and self-confidence ultimately causing his downfall before he himself even realized he was falling to begin with. Mortarion ultimately had the most sympathetic cause to turn on the Emperor out of all of them besides Angron, and that's because he just simply had more loyalty towards Horus to begin with. Alpharius turned to preserve the Emperor's dream, and in reality, they might not even be traitors in the Alpha Legion. With the Alpha Legion, nothing is certain. I have respect for Angron because he actually had reasons for everything he did.
Yeah!
I have none for Lorgar. Lorgar took advantage of Angron's plight to literally turn him into a sacrifice to the Chaos Gods. And for all of his bluster and bullshit, claiming he just wanted to save Angron's life, all of that is complete horseshit. Lorgar did nothing more or less than condemn Angron to an eternity of suffering and hate. And for what? The claim that he loved his brother? No, but Lorgar definitely bullshitted himself into believing it, just like he bullshitted himself into believing every other blatant lie he either told himself or what was told about
Who cares? Not your dad, obviously. I fucking love that.
him to cushion his glass ego and boost his fragile self-esteem. You wanna know the reason Lorgar did to Angron what he did? He did it not out of love for his brother, but to suck the ass of the Chaos Gods. Well, normally in this series, I'd be putting the decisions of the Emperor on blast or into context. I'm not doing that this time. The Emperor well and truly did nothing wrong on
don't agree with you there, my man.
Monarchia, save for not realizing the truth about his son's nature that only his foster father really understood. Lorgar never wanted to lead the heresy. He wanted to give grand speeches in support of the one who did, and be loved and respected for it. And look how well that turned out for him when he's trying to give a speech above Isfahan 5 about what they're doing, and Conrad Curse is literally 4 hours away from telling him that he's the most pathetic coward known to exist. And believe me, Conrad has seen some pathetic shit. His job was to terrify people into pissing their pants and handing over all their family members so he wouldn't turn himself loose on them. Conrad thought Lorgar was more pathetic than that. Lorgar never wanted to be the one to shoulder the responsibility. Never that, blaming anyone else in Reach for the atrocities that he himself had initiated and approved of. He never wanted to be responsible for any decision he had made, blaming the need for the truth, claiming that it was the will of the gods, claiming
Can I just say this ending is the fucking best thing?
he must sacrifice anything and everything for the truth, and no matter what the cost, no matter how perverse or horrific, Lorgar would pay it, and gladly. Anything to keep from facing the real truth. The truth that Lorgar has not once been able to accept about himself and still cannot. Lorgar cannot face the fact that he is evil. Evil in its most pure form. That's it. The fucking video is done on Lorgar. Fuck Lorgar. Old man out.
Fuck Lorgar! But also fuck E, but I'm gonna get that off my screen because I'm not gonna stand for he did nothing wrong because I think both of them made mistakes. Okay, everyone, that was today's video. I will be continuing this series next week. Once again, big thank you to Old Man Reacts for watching part 1 of this. It was really nice of them. And I'm excited to keep watching some of these because these are funny. And it's nice to have someone else who thinks the Emperor's an idiot, you know? But that is it for today. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming in. I do promise things are going to start becoming more regular again very soon. I do need to catch up with some contractual obligations I have in relation to my other channels. As you guys know, I receive review keys. I have deadlines that I have to meet to get these sorts of things out. So once I'm caught up on that, it should be fully back to normal. but at the moment I am playing a bit of catch up because I did take some time off for, obviously, the bereavement. There's been a lot of bereavement in 2023, and yeah, it's been kind of difficult. But I will be back next week with another episode of this, so thank you all for coming in. I am proud of you all for getting through today, even more proud of you for getting through tomorrow. And Wiedersehen, arrivederci, good assuras, all the way go. Peace! See you all in the next one. Bye! Let me just send a GG.